Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Inês. Good to have you here. Welcome to the R&D Sessions powered by EDP New. For those who are not so familiar with EDP New, let me start by introducing us. We are the Research and Development Center of the EDP Group, and we work on European R&D projects looking at innovative solutions for decarbonization, smartification, and flexibility of the energy sector. We have been organizing these R&D sessions initiative since 2020, and the aim of our sessions is to get together experts to discuss several topics regarding the future of energy, the challenges we are facing, and also the solutions that we are already putting into practice to revolutionize the energy sector. Please note that these webinars are recorded and the previous sessions are also available on our website. So you just need to read our QR code on this slide and you will be able to watch them. And also this session will be available in our website and YouTube channels in a couple of days. For today's webinar, we want to encourage you to use our Q&A chat to ask your questions to our guest speakers. And at the end of this event, we will have a Q&A moment where the speakers will be able to answer. With no further delays, we want to welcome again to this event and wish you all a great session, but not without first introducing our moderator, Francisco Branco. For a long time now, Francisco has tried to make his academic and professional path converge towards energy sustainability. And he swapped mechanical engineering for the green transition and concluded the European Institute of Technology's Energy Master's degree in renewable energy engineering. Between Lisbon and Barcelona, he learned not only about the technical sides of the energy transition, but also the essential role innovation and entrepreneurship play when it comes to ensuring a better tomorrow in the energy sector. In a tough mid-COVID-19 job market, he opted for joining Deloitte, where he became a tax incentives consultant. And now he works with us here at EDP New as an R&D engineer and collaborates in European funded projects related to electric mobility. And finally, he's able to say his professional path as covered with his passion for energy sustainability. So thank you, Francisco, for moderating this session, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Inês. So let's move on. I apologize. Yep. So welcome, everyone. Let's now go through our R&D sessions agenda. First, we'll have our very own EDP News Luís Dias. He will go over the current trends regarding electric mobility and its integration with the power system. Then we'll have Hugo Niesing from the Municipality of Amsterdam. He will talk about the unique case study exploring the flexibility challenges and solutions in the city of Amsterdam. And then we'll have Anders Zubiria Gomez from Technalia, and he will speak about current challenges and possible R&D solutions concerning the future of e-mobility with an emphasis on distribution grid operation. Last but not the least, we'll have a Q&A where we will be able to present all your questions to our speakers. So without further ado, let's move on to our first speaker. A warm in-house welcome to our very own EDP News Luís Dias. Luís is an accomplished engineer. He is engaged in developing solutions for the decarbonization of transports and energy production. And during his academic and professional path, Luís has built key expertise in electric vehicle charging, grid integration, power electronics, renewable energy, and smart grids. For the last 10 years, Luís has worked in several projects in 3 different countries across the globe. In his homeland, in Brazil, he pioneered the installation and demonstration of EV charging for both light and heavy vehicles at BYD. Later in his career in Sweden, he worked as a product owner for electric powertrain parts at Volvo Cars. And now in Portugal, he started by working as a development engineer for power inverters components, and currently is an R&D engineer here at EDP New, where he collaborates in European funded projects related to electric mobility, for example, Drive2X and EV4U. He also supports the company's energy consultancy activities. Luís happens to be one of my project managers here at EDP New. He's someone who has taught me already a great deal in these very few short months. And now he's about to share his knowledge on electric mobility with you too. So it's great to have you here, Luís. Thank you very much. And whenever you're ready, you may commence your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. I couldn't present myself better. So thanks for this introduction. And I am very, very excited about it. And I'm very also excited to share this panel with such great partners in the Drive to X project. So Amsterdam is our partner, Technali is our partner. We have a lot of other partners. So it has been a great project to work on. And in this opening session, I have the hard task to try to synthesize all the novelties and the challenges and the opportunities that we are facing in the electric mobility scope. So I'll do my best to pour and to give the lay of the land on how we are, where we are, and how we are right now in terms of electric mobility, and what we, and when I say we, I refer to, of course, R&D engineering, but also other players in this field, for example, automakers, energy suppliers, charging point operators, regulators, governments, and finally users, what we should be looking at, or what should we be expecting to the next few decades, and in particular the next decade, which will be fundamental for this development. So starting on where we are now 26 million electric vehicles in the roads worldwide. And this is an information from the International Energy Agency in its latest EV Outlook 2023. Every year, IEA releases an update of this. And we can see here that there is a steep and positive growth in electric vehicles, in battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. This is data from 2022, so we are almost approaching the end of 2023, so we can safely expect that given this annual growth, we can say that we surpassed the line of 30 million vehicles worldwide. Most of this is pushed by China, and here we can see the light blue and the blue ones are the Europe. But this graph, and we should be cautious with that, this graph can be misleading in one sense. It seems, and it is very positive, but it does not reveal that we still have a long way to go. Roughly in the world, we have 1.5 billion vehicles running on fossil fuels. So 26 million, 30 million is still a very little fraction that we have a lot to go to. And this graph, in particular for Europe, will change dramatically, as I expect, from 2035 onwards, because we'll have the ban of the fossil fuels, of the fossil fuel cars sales starting on that year, 2035. It doesn't mean that, of course, you can still buy a car until that year. You cannot buy a new car from that year onwards, or at least a fossil fuel-based car. So it doesn't mean, and we have to be subtle here, it doesn't mean that we can only buy electric cars. We cannot buy fossil fuel-based cars. So we have to pay attention on that too. Contrarily to this trend on light vehicles, heavy-duty vehicles aren't growing that fast. So in 2022, it was nearly 66,000 electric buses and 60,000 medium and heavy-duty trucks sold worldwide, which is approximately, for the case of the trucks, approximately 4% of the market share. And this, so this is not that positive yet, but still, and you can see here there's a huge fluctuation on these shares on vehicles sold worldwide, but this will also be, of course, a trend and a great part of the electric mobility in the future. Another thing that we should pay attention to is there are not only light or heavy-duty vehicles, but a segment of vehicles that it's quite exciting and will grow and is expected to grow quite a lot, or let me push again, or two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So this study from McKinsey expect that it will reach a 30% share of these vehicles worldwide, and especially in China and Asian regions. But here you can see also Europe, which already has now around 80% of electrification level. This is expected to give a huge jump in the next decade. So it's a market of $218 billion, a huge market. And from here, we can ask, some of you might remember in the early 2010s, there was a company called Better Place. It was a startup, and they proposed a new idea to combat or to try to mitigate the range anxiety or the charging time anxiety, which was the battery swapping. it didn't went well. But in 2- and 3-wheelers, light vehicles with lighter batteries, with portable batteries, this idea can come up again. And this is an interesting and very highly potential business opportunity. So if you have the time to think about it, drop here in the chat what you think, if this is something that will be a trend in the future, if you see this is a solution to these vehicles, what are your ideas? I would love to hear that. And a bit outside of the scope of what we do here in investigating the integration of electric vehicles and the grids, but it's also a question that is quite common and relevant in this field is, how do these cars actually contribute to decarbonization? How those 26-30 million vehicles contribute to decarbonization? It's not perhaps that magical solution that as long as you start using an electric vehicle, it will decarbonize and will clean out the emissions. These two cars, these two Volvo models, they are equivalent in terms of segment and capacity. One is electric and the other one is internal combustion. This is how they compare in terms of emissions. So, and these emissions, here is the key takeaway. The cleaner the grid that feeds it, that charges that vehicle, the cleaner the vehicle will be throughout its lifetime. So in this graph here, we can see how many kilometers are necessary so that the electric vehicle catches up, breaks even the emissions that are due to the internal combustion engine. So it depends on the mix of electricity that is feeding that car. If it's a wind electricity, and here in their report, the LCA report, Life Cycle Assessment report, they mention wind electricity, but when we say wind, it's clean energy, zero emissions energy. When we compare, when we charge this electric vehicle, which has around 70 kilowatt hour, 355 kilometers of range, when we charge this vehicle only with clean energy, it takes 49,000 kilometers for the internal combustion one to start polluting or start emitting more than the electric car, the pure electric car. So when you start using, and pay attention to the term using, not anymore owning or having a vehicle, when you start that, and if you have less than this threshold here, unfortunately, we are still emitting more. But there is a break-even point, and this break-even point is within the lifetime of the vehicle. And here in this graph, it becomes even clearer. This is the ICE or the internal combustion engine emissions over a lifetime. If I'm not wrong, this is 200,000 kilometers. And we have around 59 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. That is due to production, that is due to the raw materials, that is due to the usage. If we go for a completely clean grid, and this is the part that partly responds to the question of this webinar, if the electric vehicle is a blocker and enabler of the grid, they will work together, they will evolve together. So if you have a cleaner grid, you have less than half of the emissions, even with that offset, starting offset due to the lithium-ion batteries. And these lithium-ion batteries represent 28% of the emissions, of the starting emissions of these vehicles when they are brand new. Still, again, a long way to go, and batteries have also a huge potential to reduce even further that carbon footprint, as well as the rare earth materials that are used in the vehicles, such as cobalt or other magnets that are deployed in the motor. There are already being developed solutions to not use anymore, to reduce the usage of these materials. So for people who still have second thoughts about electric vehicles, about their toxicity, about their emissions, about how really sustainable they are, this is to say they are not a magic solution, but already now, these cars are already in the market now, they are more sustainable over a lifetime than an internal combustion engine, and it will only get better. So now, trying to have a look into the future, what we are looking at. We are looking at many things, but the main ones here for the scope of this presentation, we are looking at future vehicle grid integration, and we are also looking at the mobility paradigm change. So to really become a grid enabler or a grid tool to support the grid in its digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization, EVs must be smart and bidirectional when it comes to their integration. So how is that? How is to be smart? To be smart is to charge when it is possible and when it is better suited for the grid. And bidirectional is to be able to load shift, to use the storage that it has embedded on it and change and give back to the grid in times that are more needed by the grid and not the vehicle, and vice versa. This raises the concepts that some of you already know, some of you already seen that, which is V, a number, and G, vehicle and grid. So when you have V1G, it's unidirectional power flow. So this is the simple integration of vehicle and grid. So basically a charging, which can be smart charging, which is already very good and very beneficial for the grid. So in practice, it is, you can postpone, you can reduce the power of your charging to keep the grid parameters under well and under good shape and under good functionality. And you also have the bidirectional terms. So V2G, vehicle to grid, vehicle to building, and vehicle to home. They, at a first glance, they seem the same, but there is a very important distinction here, is that V2G is front of the meter, is directly the vehicle to the grid. And while V2B and vehicle to home, a vehicle to building and vehicle to home is behind the meter. So you manage it for your own good, and of course, the good of the grid as well. This distinction of front meter and behind meter is particularly important when we talk about regulation needs. And this, I hope you can see it well. The more advanced smart charging and the more bidirectional capable the vehicles are, the more flexible they are, the more flexibility they provide to the grids. And as we can see here, and that's our reason to be here as researchers, is that the market maturity of this technology is still low. So this is some findings that we have in our first deliverable on Drive2X. This is submitted and available online, most likely in our website, drive2x.eu. Continuing, there are a lot of barriers still to suppress in terms of vehicle and grids integration. And note here that I use V2X. It can be vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, or vehicle to building. And the main one that we found in Drive2X when reviewing the scientific literature is that most say battery degradation is a major blocker for the user and even for the vehicle manufacturer itself. And this is quite in line when we look at surveys with the users. This is a survey performed by NED, the operator in France, and they asked here, what are the barriers that prevent you, EV user, from deploying V2X capability? So 62% referred battery degradation. So people here are concerned, people and automakers and even other players are concerned because we still do not know how extent or if any bidirectionality improves or worsens battery degradation. So this is a key part of our research of these demonstration projects, is to look at this issue and try to give a good answer for that and provide solutions if the answer is not sufficiently good or as expected, which is to not have a relevant degradation, or at least if there is a degradation, that it pays off due to the service you provide to the grid. And V2X, bidirectionality and smart charging also open up several business opportunities and will change dramatically the role of the main stakeholders in the electric mobility sector. So this is some news from Germany. Volkswagen sells storage capacity. This would create a new business areas for an automaker. The car manufacturer sells storage capacity. So they would provide a turnkey solution in which you can have a wall box at your home. You have already your solar panel. You can leverage and be cleaner. Of course, you can leverage the cleanliness of your energy usage and the potential of your car when it's not under use. So this is the first trend we are looking at, and we are working over it. And a second trend It is a bit more broad, which is the future of mobility. It's not only to change one internal combustion engine vehicle for an electric vehicle. It will change also the way we interact, the way we use, the way we live in mobility. So the future of mobility is shared, is multimodal, and is digitalized. And this is a key concept that will appear more and more in the future, is mobility as a service, which acronym is MaaS. It's a type of service that deploys a digital channel, so basically an app. So if you think about Uber, Bolt, or other services like this is mobility as a service. But if you also think about shared cars, car sharing, bike sharing, ride hailing, all of these that are facilitated by a digital mean that also manages the payments and reserves and how it should work.
Luis,
This,
sorry to interrupt
yeah.
you. Just to say, if you
Yeah.
could
Yeah,
speed
I
up
will.
just a bit. Thank you so much. Sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
This will be a game changer, and this influences not only the design of the cars and the use of the cars, but also influences how we place chargers, how we project the power of these chargers, and how we charge themselves. Because when these cars are shared, their use type is very different from an individual use. So also on Drive2X, we have some user stories in our deliverables that show quite clearly. And if you read this story, you will see that it's very familiar and you can feel that it's close to happen. So for example, urban's potential story of a user. We have an office worker who lives in a little town outside of the city, like so many of us. She began her morning routine driving an electric car so that she achieves a multimodal hub in the outskirts of the city. Arriving at that hub, she has a charger for her electric car. Then she gets the tram, also a clean or a sustainable mode of transportation. Later of the day, she has a consumer that she needs to meet another side of the city. She doesn't need to go back or take the public transportation. She can call a service, which will also run in electric vehicle to get there, and so on. We also can think of paradigms in rural environments. So we also have user stories for rural utilization. And here note, the vehicles can store energy, excess of energy, but we can also use other types of fuels. So biofuels, for example, which is also a clean source of energy. So we are not saying that only electric cars are solution, but we are looking for decarbonized paths. Some key takeaways then to finish. So what we want to keep from this presentation is that electric vehicles are growing fast, but there's still a long way to go, as we saw from the numbers. Mobility paradigm is under deep transformation, and this transformation deeply influences how we use the vehicles and how we charge these vehicles, and even how these vehicles are designed. And smart and bidirectional integration of EVs and grids still have many gaps to close, but many opportunities to explore. And this is what will make electric vehicles an enabler, a tool for the grids of the future. A final word, just to finish. I mentioned many times our project Drive2X. These projects that you see here are the projects currently running at EDPNU. The two main ones, the two fully focused on electric mobility, as Francisco already mentioned, is EV4U and Drive2X. But other projects that we are running right now that are related to positive energy communities, to flexibility of grids, they also have a part in electric mobility. And these two projects in particular, and outside the scope of NEW, they now are forming what we call the V2X cluster, an initiative from the European Association of Electric Mobility to bring together all the running projects funded by European Commission in this topic of electric mobility. So we are talking about these two, we are talking about flow, we are talking about scale, other projects, so that we can boost the sharing of knowledge, so that we can optimize our efforts, and so that we have a place to discuss our findings and put everyone into the same direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Great presentation, as always. I will now share my screen. So again, Luis, thank you so much. And how important is it to have some Drive2X insights coming here? And as Luis said, please, if you want to know more, go to drive2x.eu. the deliverables will keep coming during the duration of the project. So moving on, we have now focused on what is the overarching context of electric mobility. And now we're moving towards a very particular and interesting use case regarding electric mobility and shared flexibility. And here to do just that, I'd like you to welcome Hugo Niedzing. Hugo is an Amsterdammer, currently working on the municipality of Amsterdam. He has been living on his now sustainable boat for about 33 years, the first 7 of these years without water, gas, or electricity. You could say those years were when his energy ambition really kicked off. His wide-ranging expertise and arduous sustainability efforts resulted in Resourcefully, which is one of the first companies fully focused on smart integration of renewable energy, flexible consumption, and e-mobility, with an aim to leverage Europe's city-level green transition. Currently in the municipality of Amsterdam, Hugo carries out projects, for example, Drive2X, to bring to life the same urban transition towards a more sustainable future. He focuses on avoiding network congestion via the smart integration of electric mobility and vehicle to everything. Hugo, thank you again so much for being here. Please feel free to go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much for the possibility to present here. Do you see my presentation already?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good. Now, thank you very much indeed. My name is Hugo Niedzing, or Hugo in Iberian language. I'm working already over 15 years on this topic, and now I'm working like a year and a half for the city of Amsterdam for 2 days a week to get this transition further. So I have two caps, the city of Amsterdam itself and also Resourcefully. And my main topic will be on the most urgent need that Amsterdam has in flexibility, in the integration that Luis was also already talking. Amsterdam is also partner in Drive2X, but as we are just started the project and we're determining now our pilot, I will first give you the bigger picture of where Amsterdam is standing. Then I will show something on our actual activities on the level of a understation. And the third one, more practical examples, which is also in the line of Drive2X, but projects which are already up and running. And I would be honored that in half a year I could dedicate more to our progress within Drive2X, showing how we're going to operate and also see the added value of not flexible charging, but actually giving the energy from an EV to an office or to an event. And well, that's this is the outline. I'll try to keep it on time. The city of Amsterdam is quite ambitious in their climate goals, also quite logic. Amsterdam is located at sea level rise, and if we don't continue, if we continue the way we do, then we will become an Atlantis, which is not the future that we would like to see. Most prominent is our ambition to get off all heating by gas, and secondly, the complete mobility without any emissions in 2030. And the third one is also that we would really like to boost the amount of local generated and local consumed energy within our city. And combining those three is difficult. What we see here is a study that we have been doing with our DSO, that's Leander. And if you see all those lines, well, these are different scenarios of the increase of the total peak consumption by the whole city of Amsterdam. If you see to the left, I don't know if you see my mouse, it's 1,000 in 2019. And in 2030, it is around 2,500. That means a multiplication by a factor 2.5. But it can also be 3 and it can also be 2. But that we are going to increase our common consumption of electricity at the same moment as a city is very evident. And this causes huge problems. Here you see an image of the city of Amsterdam. And the red part, this is Amsterdam North, which is separated by a big canal. the whole Amsterdam North is under grid congestion. That means that nobody at this moment gets a connection bigger than 3 times 80 amps. That's 55 kilowatts, which it would be, well, for a household, it still works. But if you have a supermarket, if you have a charging plaza, if you want a school to be connected, and in that area in North, there's a lot of development ongoing. So now it really stops our further development to a society which is cleaner, which is less emission. The same is for the western part of Amsterdam, which is with loads of, that the harbor is there, and loads of companies all now have to become zero emission, but they can't install the charging infrastructure because they need more grid space. They need more grid connections. So, and there's now a lot going on, diving into those companies or in clustered companies to see if combinations are possible, because otherwise we will not achieve our goals, not even by half. Now, here we have 9 substations in this red area. And here, this is the table of those 9 substations. And I pick out one of them. This one is Vliegenbos with the red circle. It's going to be upgraded in 2026, hopefully. So until 2026, there is a problem because you don't get those connections. And this is the substation we're talking about. This is the center of Amsterdam. This is the canal. This is Amsterdam North. And it's a area which is mostly used for residential. It's not so much business. There are schools, there are hospitals, but the energy demand is, quite dominated by people coming home. Now, this is the information that we have received from our DSO, showing that here on the right, that congestion is not occurring in April, May, June, July, August, September, October, a little bit in March, a little bit in November, but the problems are December, January, February. Then, when it occurs, it's not occurring at 10 o'clock in the evening until 8 in the morning. And it really happens between 4:30 until 8. When people come home, they start cooking, they charge their EV, they put their heat pump on, they put all other electrical applications on. So it's really that moment, which means that in the other moments of the day and during those summer months, we are looking now to see, okay, what is still possible? And that we do as a city together with our DSO. Our DSO is in control, but we work together. Well, one car, especially when you have a Tesla 3-phase, you can pick up more electricity than 10 households together, without electric vehicles, of course. So what we did, Amsterdam at this moment has about 7,000 public charging stations. And these public charging stations are controlled by the CPO, the charge point operator. And at this moment, that is Equans. It's a French company. Before it was Vattenfall. And with Vattenfall, the DSO, the municipality, the university, the operator, and ELAT, Knowledge Center that we know, we did an in-depth study of the usage of the public charging stations. And not individual, no, we looked at that at the level of the transformation houses. We choose 10 transformation houses distributed over the city, mostly in residential areas, and we looked to the total electricity usage and production and how much all public EVs were doing together. Because the DSO was reserving a certain capacity for each of those charging stations, but the simultaneous charging was so low that if you group that below the transformation house, we could reduce that a lot. The limit of each of those charging stations is 3 times 25 amps, which is 17 kilowatts. And we went down to 7, to 5, to 4, to 3. And it was quite amazing to see that, well, instead of 17, if you look at 8 kilowatt, we have 1.1% of the cases that the cars would be affected. If you would go down 6, it's 3.5%. And affected in a living residential area is not a problem, especially when you stay from 5 o'clock when you put your car to the public charger and you go away again at 8 in the morning, which is 90% of what happens in those residential areas. So if you would go down extremely low, then you would have an impact on 15%. Now, then the debate comes, what is acceptable? Well, that's what we're now trying out together with the CPO, if an overruled bottom is applicable or not. And that's what we're finding out, but that's also the social part. Do people accept it? If you go for dinner with your kids or with your parents and you're there for 2 hours and you only charge 60% of what you expect, you might not be happy. So that is a thing. But if the DSO is turning off the public lights because of grid congestion, you're also not happy. So we have to see how this is going to evolve. Well, the cluster demand was 5 times less than the program demand, and we can, without affecting the actual constraints on the grid, include 3 times more charging stations in the streets. At this moment, we have very little complaints, and it was more about the fact that we put a sticker, we're going to do this, than that EV users were really having a problem. And now we're scaling it up to first 5,000 of the charging points, and first in those most affected understations, which do suffer most of grid congestion. And again, then we look again to those who are having problems in that specific 5 to the next morning time frame. Now we go down one level more, because there's like, well, depending on the neighborhood, it can, but like 50% of the EVs is in Amsterdam in the street, and the other 50% of the cars are in the own carport or in the parking garage below the building. And below those buildings, people also have their heat pumps. They have their washing machines and other cooling aircos, etc., all the appliances. Now, as the DSO is measuring 10 out of 2,300 transformation houses, we took one of those, and it's also one that we already have quite some knowledge on the energy system. So we have 2,300 of those transformation houses, and about 1,000 need to be upgraded, and it costs 400K approximately to upgrade one. That would mean if we have 900, then you talk about 400 millions of euros to be spent before 2030. And our DSO has enough money to pay that, but we don't have the time, we cannot buy the materials, we don't have the people to put that in the street, and the procedures and the space is a problem. So it is a simply practical thing that we cannot do it. And I will show later, it's also in a lot of cases more valuable to distribute your consumption intelligently than to upgrade your infrastructure when it's only valid for 7 or 8% of the year. Okay, this is the area. Here we see again the city. In this area, there's about 540 households living. And what we want to show is that with this flexibility, we can really reduce the peak load on the transformation house. It's called an MSR. Oh. Another thing that we want to show is that we can really increase the uptake of local made solar energy, which otherwise is spread into the grid at the moment that nobody needs it. In the Netherlands, we have long summer days in May, June, July, August, and during those hours, energy has the lowest price. And nowadays we have a net metering system. So it means every kilowatt hour that you put on the grid from your solar, you can discount it from your energy bill, including all taxes. But that is going to be outfaded in the coming 7 years. And another one, which I think is quite important, is the energy independence. The more energy you can make as a family, as a building, or as such an energy community below your transformation house, and preferably for a fair price, the less you are dependent on external energies imported either from big windmills on the sea or from gas from not such democratic states. Now, and during 2022, we did a study with the University of Applied Science, and what you see here is the graph, is a daily graph of consumption of this transformation house. And in red, we see what happens towards 2030 if the increase of EVs is middle, not even high. And the green line shows what happens if we move that EV charging from 6 in the afternoon more towards 8 in the evening until 3, 4 in the morning. You can decrease 30% of the peak, which means that the same transformation house can live up to 20 years longer. And of course, this is very much depending on the neighborhood. In a neighborhood where you have a heat infrastructure, or you go to collective heat pumps, the impact on the electricity grid is completely different. Because a heat pump, especially a collective heat pump, also requires a lot of electricity. But if you have a heat, what do you call it, a heat net, when it's created somewhere else with excess of heat from industry, then you don't have an impact on
sorry to interrupt you. Just if you could speak up just a bit. Thank you. Sorry.
A bit. Sorry, if I could.
If you could speed up just a bit.
Yes, I
sorry
will,
for interrupting. Go ahead.
Okay. So in this particular area, we know exactly what is the low voltage system. We know the amount of public charging points. We know every year how much solar is being added, and it goes very fast. And we have already 35 participants who have sub-meters who provide all the data, real-time accessible. And by that, we created an energy information tool. Now, this is almost the last slide. Here we show real-time how much electricity is being consumed. That's the blue line, and produced. And here, over 3 hours, there was more than 100 kilowatt overproduction, which was just spread into the grid. And a couple of hours later, you see that everybody starts charging their EV. In this neighborhood, there's no heat demand because they have a heat grid. So if you move that energy, then you could have charged over 20 EVs or heat water for over 150 CO2 neutral showers. Now, here we see what we know is solar public EV, but in the households, we don't know how many cars there are and how the charging infrastructure is working, the heating, the cooling, the cooking, the washing. There's a lot of devices which are quite time independent. And we really would like to make this system work. And therefore, we are having the technology, we have the partners who can do that. The big challenge is in the financial, legal, and administrative issue. How an energy company is going to give me a different price when my neighbor is charging his car on my solar energy and everything is measured. That still is not operational, but we are now going to show that. And yeah, EV charging is has the biggest component of flexibility. And if we will have V2G, then it can even be better. And I think that we need good demonstrations or we need blackouts of our actual system. Now, technically it's possible. Privacy is very important, security. The DSO is the main beneficiary, but they are not very willing to invest in cost that they are not going to make in the future. That's a very difficult discussion. It is complex. with all these entities. But it's a no-brainer. It's good for the grid, it's good for the renewable intakes, it's good for our finances, and it's good for our energy independence. So we have to go that way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hugo. Great presentation.
I hope it was not too
It's-
long.
No, it was great. Even the timing was perfect. And thank you so much for that presentation. As we all know here in EU, the Flex Power 3 project was one of the landmarks in the sector, and we just hope that Drive to X has the same level of impact as you were able to do in the Flex Power 3. So thank you very much, Hugo, for your presentation, insightful as ever. Also, if you'd like to know more about how Hugo made these boats sustainable and into one of the first ever vehicle-to-grid vehicles in the Netherlands, don't hesitate to visit the link that we are now placing in the chat. Finally, because every challenge is also an opportunity for new innovative solutions, we also have Ander Zubiria Gomez to enlighten us on what lies ahead for R&D in the field of electric mobility. Welcome, Ander. Ander is a renewable energy engineer by the University of the Basque Country. He pursued his master's degree on the integration of renewable energy sources into the power system in that same university. After working on strategy consulting on new business models for the energy transition, he started his research career on battery systems modeling and software tool development for energy management and market monetization. Currently, Ander is part of the Power Systems team on Technalia Research and Innovation. He works as a researcher on flexibility management in coupled energy systems. His main fields of research are distributed energy resources, power systems modeling, energy management, and batteries. He also works in various electric mobility projects, none of the least which Drive to X. Ander, thank you again for your presence. Please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. And thank you very much to my colleagues, Luis and Hugo, for the presentations, because you showed a good example of some of the issues that can bring massive EV deployment and some of the concepts that I am going to show right now in my presentation. So I will share my screen. So please confirm me if you can see it properly.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I will speak a little bit about some of the challenges that are brought by EV massive deployment, but also the opportunities that come along with these challenges. And afterwards, I will show some of the projects that we are working on regarding these R&D lines and some of the solutions that we are developing on these projects. Okay, so as you have already mentioned, EV massive deployment bring many challenges on the distribution grid sector, and in particular in all the activities that are held by this sector. So ranging from planning to the grid investment, but also the grid operation, and at last the regulation of this activity. And this is mainly because even if distribution grids are always designed to cope with an increase on electricity demand, as Hugo showed on his previous presentation, incorporating electric vehicles is too much, a very big increase on electricity demand for the system. So if no measures are taken regarding this challenge, significant costs on grid upgrade could happen, and this of course would be translated into higher costs for energy consumers. So in this line, European directives are promoting to create are proposing a new role for the distribution system operator, which in fact would be a double role. On the one hand, would be a system operator in charge of providing the electricity, as is doing currently, but also a market facilitator, an actor that can integrate all these flexible resources and can take advantage of this flexibility to operate the power system in a proper manner and providing a lower cost for all consumers. So in this regard, of course, this EV massive deployment will have an impact first on the, let's say, grid segment dimension, because electric mobility will come in different points of the distribution grid. So in this regard, different charge power, timing, and also flexibility capabilities will come up. But this EV massive deployment will be also different and will require different solutions when it comes to the EV uptake timing or EV uptake degree. So depending on the amount of electric vehicles, different solutions will be needed to host all these electric vehicles in the distribution grid. So if we go to the low voltage grid segment, in this segment we can find the common home charging, slow public chargers, but also the small electric vehicle fleets. And all of these have a common characteristic on charge, which is that they are have a slow charge with low power and a long period of charging. So the main impact on the distribution grid would be directly related to the low voltage grid lines, but also the transformers. And in this regard, different opportunities for R&D organizations would come up. For instance, EV fleet management solutions or algorithms is a very trendy line on research, but also, as Luis mentioned before, the B2Home or B2B opportunities behind the meter are a very interesting solution to cope with this massive deployment on low voltage grids. If we go upper on the distribution grid and we go to the more medium voltage level, here we have the urban charger hubs, but also the fast and ultra fast public chargers. So these chargers are different from the previous ones, of course, and the main feature is that they demand high power during very short periods of time. So here there are some good impacts related to the medium voltage lines and mostly on the overloading of these lines and medium voltage transformers. And here we have also the drawback that this type of charge has the time restriction. So the flexibility that this type of charging provides to the system is lower compared to the previous segment. So in this case, I would mention two key opportunities for research, which are first the integrated urban planning solutions to optimally locate and size the system elements, but also coupling the EV chargers with energy storage technologies to reduce this peak demand and do a kind of peak shaving that reduces these peaks on the medium voltage grid. And last, on the high voltage grid segment, we would distinguish two main types of devices. First, the on-road charger hubs, and second, the heavy-duty or bus D-pads. So the first ones require, both of them require high power, but the first ones have a very short charging period, so creating a very high peaks for the high voltage grids. And on the second one, there are long periods of charging at a very high power. So here we find the similar problem compared to the medium voltage segment, because the flexibility potential is limited in comparison to the low voltage segment, because first the first one have the time restriction to charge very fast the vehicle, and the second ones have a very specific schedule for charging due to the routes that the heavy duty vehicle needs to offer. So in this line, the main opportunities also would come first from coupling these chargers with energy storage solutions to reduce peaks, but also some coordination schemes between the system operator and these companies that operate these heavy-duty transport services. And if we go to the timing of all this process, we can see that depending on the degree of EV uptake, the solutions that are needed will be very different. So if there's a low EV uptake on the system, the main technological solution that is proposed to help the distribution grid would be equipping electric vehicles with smart charging capabilities, and also having smart metering devices to control this charging process. But if we move to a higher degree of EV uptake, which could be a medium EV uptake scenario, in this case, we have already the smart metering and the smart charging capabilities, but is still needed a little bit more from the electric vehicles. So in this case, we would have to switch from smart charging to more flexibility-based services like local flexibility markets, where electric vehicles provide this bidirectional charge and these services to the power system. And once we have crossed the barrier of this medium EV uptake, we have the high EV uptake scenario where local flexibility markets and flexibility services are not enough. So in this case, it is absolutely necessary to upgrade the grid. So a combination between local flexibility and grid upgrade would be necessary. So what are the opportunities regarding these challenges? So, okay, from the technical point of view, a good opportunity would be the developing demand prediction and characterization for EV charging, because it is very complex to determine the size or the amount of electricity that will be needed, and also the patterns that will follow these electric vehicles. So for that, artificial intelligence and innovative prediction techniques are already being researched to of course, estimate and size this element, and also to reduce the costs related to upgrading and to installing new devices on the system. On the planning side, there's a big challenge and also an opportunity on optimally locating these EV chargers. So for that, there are advanced planning tools along with new grid analysis tools. Both combined can help to prioritize which are the best solutions for reinforcing the grid and to increase the hosting capacity of the grid at the lowest cost. And more on the operations side, the EV charge management is a very trendy line for managing optimally this charge and offering benefits to not only to the grid but also to the prosumer, to the EV user. So in this line, smart charging algorithms, but also B2H technologies and energy management strategies are very interesting to be combined with the previous ones. And more related to the distribution system operator, there are some monitoring and control systems that need to be put in place to have mainly to have a higher visibility on the low voltage grid. And it is also very relevant to advance in implementing metering in the devices and submetering for specific distributed energy resources to have that visibility and control better these resources. And at last, I would mention some grid management devices which are already being installed in the transmission system, but which can also be utilized in the distribution grid to manage the power flows in a better manner. So the dynamic network reconfigurations, for instance, could be some solutions that help with these power flows. And if we see the regulatory opportunities on this, I would mention The first one would be adapting the remuneration schemes for the DSOs, because as mentioned, the DSO needs to incorporate first new technologies to his remuneration schemes, but also this flexibility use has to be in a way reflected in how this DSO will be paid and how the DSO will use this flexibility. And another an opportunity for R&D and for researchers is the creation of new tariff designs that reflect the state of the system, the power, and also the location of some devices in order to incentivize this flexibility coming up from electric vehicles and other flexible resources. So to finish up, I would like to show some of the projects that we are working on, and specifically the solutions related to electromobility and electromobility energy management. So the first one would be Atelier project, which in fact is also one of the pilot sites is the Amsterdam city along with Bilbao. So this project aims to develop positive energy districts, and in particular, we are developing an energy management system that couples both the electrical but also the thermal grids, along with different energy resources like smart EV chargers. So in this case, we have developed some user-centered EV charging strategies that where the prosumer can tune some parameters related to his preferences on EV use, and with the overall goal of managing the whole building or the whole home as let's say as a whole, and minimize the electricity costs related to all energy use. Another project that we are working on more on the EV fleet and EV charging station management is the Charger Plus project, which is a Basque project, an Elkartek project. And here we are also developing smart energy management algorithms that consider different relevant aspects on the optimization of the charging costs. So in this case, we are considering the local PV generation to be maximized for the EV charge, but also with the environmental concerns of the EV users, the limitations of the connection point to the grid, and at last also we have considered some functionalities that can provide these charging stations, like B2G functionalities for providing different services to the system operator. And last but not least, the Drive to X project, which we are all working on. In this case, we are developing some solutions for B2X, a massive deployment. And in particular, from Tecnalia side, we are working on a methodology to be validated in different European cities for the detailed modeling of urban environments in order to plan massive EV deployment in these areas, and in particular considering different B2X strategies and different distribution grid scenarios. So this tool would create different scenarios to compare and to, in a way, try to plan which would be the best sizing and the best location for these devices in order to benefit all users and also the distribution system operators. So this is all by my side. I would like to thank you for the presentation and the invitation, and I'm willing to hear your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ander. So I'd like to, first of all, thank all guest speakers. Also thank the audience for being present in our session. Now, as you know, we dedicate a slot to your questions to our guest speakers. So I see most people have already submitted some questions, so let's move on with them. So to Hugo, this question is to you from Ciro Alberto Cuenca Ruiz. He asks, Hugo, do you think microgrids or energy communities could be a study case to overcome load capacity of the grid?
Yes, definitely. I mean, my last example, in fact, is a microgrid at the level of the lowest, at the lowest level of the DSO. It's, I mean, when you go from middle to low voltage, and you are, then you're providing a community of between 400 or 800 connections, households of electricity. And as we were going, from very much demand-focused production and flux towards now, we're going to a system where we're going to be responding more to the availability of clean resources. And if you do that as a community, then you need a microgrid. But a microgrid is also, I mean, microgrid, some people think about, I have a microgrid in my house with storage, but a microgrid is for me also the system that we have in our neighborhood with our energy community. And also in company, in industry, you will have all kind of microgrids. Otherwise, we need to do the microgrids and we need to do it together. We can't do it all separate anymore. I mean, in the Netherlands, I could have shown the map of the Netherlands, which is 50% red in congestion from demand and 50% red in congestion from offer. And it's, if you cannot combine those two, and in order to combine them, we have to step out of our luxury life that energy is cheap, that the grid always works and it's always available. No, those days are over.
Thank you so much, Hugo. So I'd also like to get Luis' insights on a question here from Samuel Matias. He asks, Luis, what do you envision as the future trajectory of heavy-duty vehicles, considering the pressing need for sustainability in transportation? He adds, do you anticipate that the majority of these vehicles will transition to battery electric power or any other technologies, for example, hydrogen fuel cells?
Yeah, actually, this Samuel is the transport specialist among us. I try, and in this sense, I agree quite a lot with Vaclav Smil when he does not like to make some forecasts on the future. So when he sees what has been done so far and how technology evolves. For heavy-duty vehicles, in my personal and by experience, there won't be one type only of technology that will be the main one. So I think it will be a mix of technologies and a differentiation and a change on the concept of the vehicle itself. When I say that, I think, for example, on electric buses. So you can either have very fast charging capability throughout the route of the bus, so that you can have in the vehicle less battery embedded, so it becomes lighter and it becomes cheaper. And cost here is a very important variable, because these kind of trucks and buses and other heavy-duty vehicles, they operate as fleets, so they operate for a service, and this service has costs. So if the vehicle costs twice as more, it will reflect on the service cost for the final user, for the final product. And for example, for public transportation, this is a very critical issue. And it says there is also the role of subsidies and the role of regulators. So coming back to the bus, you can have these fast charging stations throughout the route. So you can have a lighter bus with less battery, or you can have alternative fuels in that. Regarding fuel cells, I tend to be a bit resistant to, or try to wait to see, because hydrogen and the hydrogen that interests us, which is the green hydrogen, to obtain that from electrolysis, in the end, in the usage of the vehicle, you have an efficiency of around 20%. So there's a lot of losses involved compared to use that same amount of energy, for example, from a renewable source, if you use it on a battery propelled vehicle. However, trucks and buses, they work in a very well-controlled and predictable operation manner. So in this operation, it is possible to optimize and to find suitable business models that can find usefulness in deploying, for example, fuel cells. Other projects that have been tested, especially in the Nordic countries, are the electric highways, so that you have high power charging, and the United States likes to call it the megawatt charging system. You have along highways very high power chargers to propel battery electric vehicles. So I would expect that in a first transition phase would be mostly battery electric vehicles for heavy duty vehicles. And in a later phase, other types of fuels, including fuel cells, could take place as well as the technology gets more mature. And not only the technology itself, but also the surrounding technology and suppliers, supply chain, all this gets along and costs come down, because this is the major concern here. And also in this latest update on the alternative fuels regulation in Europe, there are concrete measures for the 10T roadways in Europe to support and to leverage charging capability for electrified trucks. So this is also the important role of the regulator here.
Thank you, Luis. So I'd like to conclude this Q&A with a question for Ander. So the question is, I apologize. So the question is, this is also from the people at New. That's why we won't see it at the chat. Ander, the question is, what steps can governments and industry take to make EVs more accessible and affordable for a broader range of consumers? This question is asked because you talked about regulation, not only the technical side, which I found really interesting, also here at New. So repeating the question, sorry, so you know, what steps can governments and the industry take to make EVs more accessible and affordable for a broader range of consumers?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. In fact, this is a very opportunistic question because one of the main challenges nowadays in order to switch to electromobility is the high upfront costs. So first of all, I would like to put the Spanish example, which I think that can be reflected to other European countries. So there's a direct subsidy. There are some programs that directly subsidize the switch from conventional vehicles to electric vehicles. So this is an interesting point in order to reduce these upfront cost efforts for consumers. But there are also some measures that are very interesting and many times are not so well recognized, that are tax-related measures or tax incentives that are being in place. For instance, in Spain, we have different tax incentives related first to the circulation tax. So electric vehicles do not have to pay this tax, and this is, of course, an interesting saving every year. There's also a reduced income tax on EV users. So this is also a huge, interesting amount of money that you can save if you move to electromobility. And there's also an exemption on the registration tax for the vehicle. So in the end, if you sum up the direct subsidy with these tax incentives, maybe depending on the scenario, the numbers can come up, and electric mobility can be an interesting opportunity for the EV users. So I would say that a mix of these two kind of measures will be very helpful for future EV users.
Thank you, Ander. Always great to not only hear the technical side, and this applies also to Luis and Hugo naturally, but also the social and the regulatory side that are just as important, sometimes even more important. With that last question, unfortunately, we are now out of time. We'll obviously request our guest speakers to answer your questions in the chat after our sessions has ended. Finally, I'd just like to thank all of our guest speakers, also our audience once more, and I will now pass the ball to Inês so she concludes our R&D session. Again, thank you very much for your presence. Inês, go ahead.
Indeed, Francisco. Thank you. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you to our guest speakers for the amazing presentations and for the knowledge sharing. Also, thank you to our audience, a very dynamic audience with a lot of questions and debate on our chats. Just to mention that the R&D sessions will return next month with more interesting topics, always powered by EDP New. Enjoy your afternoon and see you in October. Thank you all.